Before everything shakes, there is a quieter phase most men miss. Nothing has collapsed yet. Life still works. From the outside, it looks stable. Routines are intact. Responsibilities are met. Performance continues as normal. Relationships function well enough, but internally something is already withdrawing. The body begins to pull back from life, not theatrically, but subtly. Joy flattens, urgency disappears, presence thins. A man starts living from the neck up. This is not laziness, and it is not depression. It is also not failure. It is the first sign that an identity built on adaption has reached its limit, its threshold. At this stage, most men try to tighten their grip. They try to optimize. They try to discipline harder. They seek improvement. But the system is not asking for improvements and productivity hacks. It's asking for truth. The nervous system knows this before the mind does. Sleep becomes restless. The jaw tightens. The breath shortens. The chest holds. The body is preparing for impact, not because something bad is coming, but because something false is no longer sustainable. This is the moment before initiation, the moment before descent, the moment before shaking. Most men ignore this and just carry on. They call it stress. They call it burnout. They call it just a phase. But this is the warning bell, loud and clear. A man who listens here can slow the fall. A man who ignores it will be taught through collapse and cycles of collapse. This is not punishment. It is the clear instructions. And once the instruction is ignored long enough, the ground moves. This is the moment in a man's life when stability becomes another illusion. Not because he did something wrong, not because he failed, but because the structures he relied on were never built to hold the truth that was coming. This is not the dramatic collapse people imagine. There's no explosion, no falling off a cliff, no announcement. It begins quietly. His body tightens. His sleep becomes shallow. Old patterns stop working the way they used to. Distraction loses its power. The nervous system starts sending signals he can't ignore anymore. The world still looks the same on the outside, but internally, everything is moving. This is the moment when many men reach for numbing, for escape, for addiction, for performance, for more explanations, for even identities and different masks. But a different kind of man does something else. He inquires, he stands, not confidently, not heroically. He stands because he knows that retreat no longer works. This is where the real work begins. Most men have been taught to interpret shaking as failure, anxiety meaning weakness, uncertainty meaning incompetence, emotional volatility meaning something is wrong. But the system you were raised in was designed for obedience and productivity, not truth, depth, or initiation. Shaking is not a pathology. It is raw information. The body shakes when it reorganizes itself. The psyche stabilizes when outdated identities lose their grip and their authority. The nervous system flares when survival strategies expire. Don't consider this as breakdown. This is threshold pressure. Across every masculine lineage, whether named or erased, the same pattern appears. Before a man becomes stable, he becomes unstable. Before he stands, everything he stood on collapses. The problem is not the shaking. The problem is that modern men were never taught how to stand inside of that. There is a difference between collapse and standing. Collapse happens when a man's internal world exceeds his capacity to hold it. Standing happens when he does not outsource that pressure. The collapse boy is always looking for escape in substances, in distractions, in relationships, in spiritual fantasies, in external authority, in explanation without embodiment. The standing man, on the other hand, does something much quieter. He stabilizes his body. He slows his breath. He tells the truth internally before speaking it externally. He stops running narratives and starts tracking sensations. This is not self-control. This is capacity. Masculinity was never meant to be rigid. It was meant to be load-bearing. A man who cannot stand under pressure will always look for something around him to lean on. A man who can stand becomes something others can lean against. Men often ask why collapse feels total. Why does the job shake at the same time as the relationship? Why does addiction surface during spiritual sensitivity? Why does identity dissolve when discipline begins? Because these systems are not separate, isolated things. Your nervous system does not compartmentalize them in the way that language does or we do with individuals. When pressure arrives, it moves through everything. What you are experiencing is not chaos. It is integration pressure. It's like ripples. They touch every part of the surface. The psyche is attempting to reorganize around truth of survival. Old agreements surface again. Childhood adaptations, father wounds, shame contracts, numbing loops, false confidence, borrowed identities, and they surface because they cannot survive the next stage. This is why men panic here. Standing means allowing what is false to fall without immediately replacing it. Most men rebuild too early. They reconstruct the same life with new language. The man who stands does not rush this process. Addiction is not moral failure. It is a stabilization attempt. When the internal world shakes, the nervous system seeks repetition, predictability, relief. Substances, behaviors, compulsions, they slow the tremor temporarily. They pacify the ripples, but they do not increase one's capacity. All they do is delay the reckoning. A man who stands does not shame himself for numbing. He studies it, he inquires into it, and he asks, what pressure am I avoiding with this? What truth am I refusing to feel? What responsibility am I delaying? Standing does not mean quitting everything at once. It means no longer lying about why you are using that and what that is doing for you. The moment a man stops lying internally, his footing improves. Not because life calms down, but because he stops splitting himself to survive it. This is not mindset work, and this is not another productivity hack. You do not stand by thinking differently. You stand by regulating differently. Standing looks like breathing when the body wants to flee. Staying present when emotion spikes. Holding pressure when shame arises. Choosing delay instead of reaction. Letting sensations come through and pass without interpretation. This is masculine grounding. The body learns first, and the identity always follows. A man who cannot regulate his nervous system will always mistake intensity for truth. A man who can regulate can walk through intensity without being owned by it. This is why ancient initiation was physical, not symbolic, not verbal. The body had to learn stability before the psyche was trusted with power. Standing cannot be conceptual or theoretical. You cannot think your way into it. You cannot affirm your way into it. You cannot understand your way into it. Standing is trained into the very fabric of the nervous system, the same way that collapse was, through repetitions under pressure. Every time a man stays present, instead of escaping elsewhere, his system learns something new. Something new is encoded. Every time he breathes instead of reacts, his system updates. Every time he does not numb, does not explain, does not collapse into stories, does not abandon his sacred spine, his system recalibrates. This is not willpower. It is conditioning. It is habit. The nervous system does not care about intention. It cares about evidence under pressure. It asks one question repeatedly. Did he stay? Standing is the accumulation of thousands of small stays. Many men confuse regulation with control. Control is tightening. Regulation is grounding. Control suppresses sensation. Regulation allows sensation without being overtaken by it. A controlled man looks composed. That is until pressure exceeds his threshold. A regulated man may look quiet. He may even look shaken, but he does not fragment. Standing comes from regulation, from learning to let fear pass through your chest. Heat and sweat pass through your body. Shame arise without collapse. Grief to surface without drowning it. This is why men who have it together often fall apart later. They were controlling. They were white-knuckling it. They were not standing. Standing does not resist emotion. It outlasts it. There is a moment when standing starts to stabilize the system. And paradoxically, this is when fear spikes. Because chaos was familiar. Instability was known. Collapse had an identity. Standing removes the familiar dramas. The system says, if I'm not collapsing, then who am I? This is where many men self-sabotage. They create more problems. They pick fights. They relapse. They destabilize what is working. Not because they are weak, but because their nervous system has not yet learned to trust stability. Standing must be trained until calm no longer feels like danger. Masculine identity does not form in confidence. It forms in reliability. A man becomes trustworthy to himself when his system learns, I will not leave. This is the deepest masculine vow, often made unconsciously, not to succeed, not to win, not to dominate, but to remain present internally when it would be easier to disappear from oneself. From this, discipline becomes natural. Boundaries become clean. Direction is clear and obvious. Standing is the soil, the very bedrock, and everything else grows from it. Men often believe standing will bring clarity. It doesn't. Standing brings the silence. And silence is terrifying to the uninitiated because there's no answers, there's no guarantees, there's no certainty, there's just presence. The man who stands accepts that clarity comes later, after integrity has been proven. You do not get vision before capacity. You get vision because capacity has been built. This is where many men abandon the path. They want relief before responsibility arrives. Meaning before embodiment is there. Identity before discipline. Standing reverses the order, but rest assured, something subtle happens when a man stands long enough. Other people feel it. Not because he speaks more. Not because he dominates conversations. Because he does not wobble. In crisis, he stays grounded and stays present. In uncertainty, he does not collapse. In chaos, he does not outsource his authority. This is leadership before words. Men trust men who can stand. Children trust men who can stand. Communities stabilize around men who can stand. Not perfect men, not healed men, men who do not flee themselves. Standing is not a moment. It is a practice repeated until it becomes identity. At first, everything shakes. Then, only some things do. Gradually, the shaking moves around you, not through you. You do not harden. You do not disconnect. You become anchored. This is not arrival. It is placement. You are placed where you can hold. Many men believe they are standing when they are merely enduring. They grit their teeth. They suppress emotion. They hold tension in the jaw, in their chest, in their gut. They call it strength, but endurance is brittle. Endurance eventually snaps, or leaks, or numbs. Standing does not. Standing is relaxed alertness. It is load-bearing without the rigidity. The enduring man is always tired. The standing man is often calm, even in intensity. This distinction matters. Endurance resists life. Standing cooperates with reality without surrendering integrity. A man who endures is still fighting what is happening. A man who stands has stopped arguing with the truth. That is why standing lasts. Men often make the mistake of trying to narrate their way into stability. They tell themselves things like, I have healed now. I understand now. I've integrated. But the body does not respond to stories. It responds to consistency. Standing trains the body through repetition. Staying present in yourself when triggered. Not disassociating during confrontation. Not collapsing when misunderstood. Not numbing when overwhelmed. Slowly, something is being rewired. The breath deepens. The shoulders lower. The eyes soften. The gut stabilizes. Only then does the story change. Identity follows behavior that has been proven under pressure. This is why talk without embodiment collapses. It's just like a house of cards. And it's why quiet men with grounded bodies carry authority without effort. When everything shakes, men want answers. They want timelines, labels, certainty, and standing refuses premature resolution. The man who stands allows the ambiguity without paralysis. He allows discomfort without panic. He allows uncertainty without fantasies. This is maturity. He knows that rushing resolutions recreates the old life with new language. Standing waits until the internal structure can hold the next step. That patience is not passive. It is disciplined restraint. The man who stands is not indecisive. He is unhurried by fear. As a man stabilizes, sensitivity often increases. Emotion sharpens. Perception deepens. Intuition becomes louder. This is where many men tip into confusion. They mistake sensitivity for transcendence. They mistake insight for integration. They mistake intensity for truth. Standing is what keeps sensitivity grounded. The standing man does not chase experience. He does not inflate meaning. He does not build identity around insight. He integrates quietly. Spiritual emergence without standing becomes disorientation. Spiritual emergence with standing becomes grounded clarity. This is why grounding precedes revelation. Direction does not arrive dramatically. It returns subtly, not as ambition, not as fantasy, not as grand purpose and big ideals, as orientation. The man who stands begins to notice what drains him, what strengthens him, what requires boundaries, what deserves his devotion. His life simplifies. He stops trying to do everything. He stops needing to be everything for everyone. Direction emerges because distraction has lost its grip. This is not motivation. It is alignment. Authority is not claimed. It is recognized. The man who stands does not demand respect. He does not posture. He does not explain himself excessively. He moves slowly. He speaks clearly. He acts decisively when action is required. People feel safe around him. They feel like they can trust him, not because he is agreeable, rather because he is consistent. He shows up. His yes means yes. His no means no. His presence does not fluctuate with approval. This is real masculine authority without dominance. Standing is tested. Life will apply pressure again. Loss, misunderstanding, conflict, fatigue, but the tests are different now. They do not ask, will you survive this? They ask, will you abandon your sacred spine? The standing man does not pass every test perfectly, but he notices immediately when he drifts, when things are off. He corrects without drama. Integrity becomes reflex. Permanence does not mean nothing shakes. It means the shaking no longer defines you. Emotions move through. Circumstances change. People naturally come and go. But the internal stance, the sacred structure and backbone remains. You do not leave yourself anymore. You do not fragment into 1,000 pieces. You do not numb to cope. This is permanence, not control, but continuity of presence. The man who stands when everything around him shakes is not extraordinary. He is disciplined and trained. Trained by refusal to flee. Trained by honesty under pressure. Trained by repetition when collapse was available. This is not arrival, it is placement. You are placed where you can hold. Nothing dramatic changes externally. Everything, however, changes internally. The shaking no longer enters you, and that is how you know the work has taken root. Men like you do not arrive here by accident.